Welcome to Barnyard Language, honest talk about running farms and raising families. We are Katie and Arlene, an Iowa sheep farmer and an Ontario dairy farmer, with 6 kids, 2 husbands, and a whole lot of chaos between us.
While this is a podcast for farm families, sometimes our content isn't for the whole family. So kick off your boots, reheat your coffee, and join us for some Barnyard Language. So welcome back to Barnyard Language, everybody. Arlene is on a very well-deserved vacation this week, so I have a guest co-host for this week's update. We got Sarah Zastrow from Throwing Wrenches, Mending Fences podcast back on with us. Yay, I did it! Sarah, let's face it, I have a hard time remembering the name of my show and like my kids and such.
Well, that name is a mouthful.
It's not that it's that much of a mouthful, it was the remembering which order it goes in. But anyway, welcome back. How have you been? How are things?
Things are good. How are you? We'll start there.
Well, Sarah, as I mentioned as we were just setting up to record, I don't leave the house much. I mean, I leave the house. I don't leave the farm property much. I've heard there's an outside world. It's cold as fuck today. Let's just face it. It's the kind of cold where you start getting all those warnings popping up on your phone in the middle of the night about like, hey, it's cold. Hey, no, we mean it. It's really cold. Hey, no, it's actually really cold. Like, yeah, I got it the first 3 times, but thanks. I did a moment of levity this morning. My almost 7-year-old son got in bed and he goes, Mommy, I have a joke. I'm like, oh, okay. He goes, cats don't always land on them feet. Tractors always land on them feet. And then he just started, he was just losing it. It is just the funniest thing he's ever heard. I'm not sure I fully got it, but just in case anyone needed a laugh, he was very excited about his joke. So
watching kids like personality and sense of humor develop is a sense of joy that I did not realize existed, that I really need.
Our daughter is quite a smartass, which in my family, the saying is it's better to be a smartass than a dumbass.
I was just going to say that. Yep.
Yep. But I hope no one thinks we're going to break her of it because I end up laughing so hard every time. And I just, like yesterday she spilled something and she went to get some paper towels and I could hear the towels unspooling. And I was like, baby, I think that's enough towels. So she comes in with like 15 feet of paper towels. She goes, yeah, I think you can say that. And I'm like, just dying, what a little smartass she is. And I can't, I'm not going to stop it. Let's face it. Whatever.
Yeah. Scott, my daughter goes, don't worry about me, Mama, look the other way. I'm like, oh, no. And she's almost 3. I'm like,
you're so screwed. And you have a second one now too, right?
Yeah, he's 10 months old.
Oh, God.
So we just took them, Katie. I want you to picture this. Picture a Suburban, okay, with 4 adults and 4 children, ages 4, almost 3, almost 2, almost 1. We went from Central Michigan to Sandusky, Ohio to Kalahari, like a big water park. And then from there, traveled right on down to the farm show in Louisville. And then, Louisville. And then traveled back. And it could have gone a lot worse. And it was an overstimulating adventure, but we survived it. And we decided we'll do it again when our kids are like 10 and 12.
I feel like it's a real phase in life when it could have gone a lot worse is considered a success. Like,
yes.
I feel like that's probably what the Wright brothers said about like their first couple test flights was like, it could have gone worse. It's kind of like, well, that literally blew up in my face, but I still have one on my eyebrows, so it could have been worse.
Yes.
Yeah, I've traveled with kids. We went out to Pennsylvania for Thanksgiving to see my dad, and the boy child started asking if we were there yet before we were off our property. And it's a 16-hour drive, and I was just like, oh Yeah, could have gone worse. And I mean, it could have gone a lot worse. They're good kids, but
16 hours is a long time.
and 10 months is that fun age when they're like,
16 hours is a long time in the car for adults, let alone for little kids.
yeah. The 10 months, though, is when they're starting to be people, which is, is fun because they're starting to actually like not be a lump of dough, but also, is he crawling yet? Is he starting to like,
Yeah, so crawling, also like immediately to cords, outlets, the dog water, like everything he shouldn't. And then he'll kind of like, you'll say, hey, buddy, no, no. And he'll like stop, sit up, look at you, smirk, and then just kick it in overdrive right to whatever he was going to. And I'm like, oh, no, no, no. He's going to be a handful. He was such an easy baby. And I've heard that easy babies become toddlers who are sneak under the radar because he's real quiet. He's like, oh, Sissy is throwing a fit. Okay.
I think too, they must, how ants like leave a scent trail? I think their first kid must leave some sort of trail to everything they're not supposed to do for the second one to follow because there's no way otherwise that they could just hone in that fast on the thing they shouldn't do. And they're just like laser focused.
That's good for me to remember. I'll keep that in mind. We may need to. I find myself like re-upping our baby proofing game every once in a while, so definitely going to need to do that.
I feel like ours were close enough together that by the second one we kind of just gave up the baby proofing game because the big one would just help the little one, and it seemed, especially like the baby gate on the stairs, it seemed more dangerous to have both of them trying to fool it than to just let them play on the stairs. Like,
yeah,
it just seemed easier, which probably says a lot about my parenting, but like,
hey, it's all about natural consequences, right?
yeah. And the only, knock on wood, the only broken bone we've had was on shag carpeting at my in-laws' house. So,
hey, that's pretty good.
I'm just saying. Anyway, Sarah, I know you have a class to go teach, and I have work to go do. So, we can introduce this week's guest, and thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. I'm excited to hear the episode.
Today, we are talking to Kevin Dietzel, who is joining us from Iowa, like Katie, although I don't think they're neighbors as far as I understand. We always start each of our interviews the same way, and I happen to know that Kevin's a listener, so I don't need to give him the whole rundown, so I'm just going to jump right in and ask Kevin, what are you growing?
Well, I'm going to start with family. We are growing two wonderful kids. We have a girl in sixth grade and a boy in eighth grade. And we are growing lots of grass on our farm. And we harvest that grass mostly using dairy cows. And then we turn that grass into cheese. And we are growing our value-added dairy business we will be making butter starting in a couple months here. Our new butter making things it takes a little while for dairy equipment to come after you order it, but so that's a growth area. So.
And so how many cows are we using to make cheese and butter and convert grass into cheese and butter?
Well, let's see. So that's always a moving number. Uh, but particularly right now, we are around the 20 cow scale. This year, we're going to be more in the 10 to 12 cow range.
And so when you're making products, I know that that means that you also have to then sell those products. And it feels like dairy farmers already have a lot of work going on, every day anyway, just milking cows and keeping the animals healthy. So where are you selling your products, and what are you doing on the kind of the marketing side of things?
Well, we are almost exclusively direct to consumer. So approximately 60% of our sales are to farmers markets. So we're in central Iowa. We're about an hour north of Des Moines. So we sell it to the Ames Downtown Farmers Market and the Des Moines Downtown Farmers Market. And then in the winter months, when there are no farmers markets, we ship through our website, and we also have offered a winter cheese club. So it's popular for like a Christmas present. So people get a box with a variety of cheeses once a month, January, February, and March. And then we also are selling through a few different buying club type of things that we partner with other farms. So a few different sort of direct to consumer areas. We sell through one store, the Wheatsfield Co-op in Ames, just because they've supported us right from the start, and a few restaurants, but we don't use any distributors and we don't sell in a lot of grocery stores or anything like that.
Sure. A cheese club is definitely the kind of club that I want to be a member of. Just to, just a hint to my husband if he's listening, that would be a great Christmas gift. I don't know that you probably can't ship across the border, but if there are Canadian cheese clubs, I'd be in. How many different kinds of cheeses do you personally make?
It's a good question. I always lose count. Let's just say, without trying to list them off, around 8 different types. We have some that we sell a younger version and a more aged version that are very different cheese eating experiences, but are, you know, from the initial make process the same. So, but yeah, around 8 different types.
So, Kevin, obviously, we know each other IRL. And for our listeners who are sadly not viewers, Kevin and I are wearing the same shirt this morning. So that's a real vibe. It's an Iowa thing. And I'm wondering what your ag background is.
As a kid, my family lived on a farm in central Minnesota, and that's where I fell in love with farming. Then we moved to the Twin Cities when I was in before 8th grade, and so I went to high school right near uptown Minneapolis. And then after high school, I went to Germany and did a farm apprenticeship for 3 years. So I worked on 3 different organic, mixed, primarily dairy, but dairy, vegetable, grain farms. So 3 different farms for a year each. And I even have a diploma to show that I completed it. There's a like 6 hour written test, and there's a 8 hour practical exam to to show that you're qualified to be a farmer. So that was my sort of formal training time. After that, I came back to the States. I went to the University of Minnesota Morris for college, where I majored in biology with, at that time, originally I was thinking of being pre-vet, but decided I didn't like school enough to go another 4 years. But most importantly, in my college career, I met my wife, Renee. We got married in 2006 after graduation, and she went to graduate school for her master's degree in soil science at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York. So we moved out there for 2.5 years, and we actually bought an acreage out there and fixed up the house. But this was my sort of stipulation for moving to New York with her. I said, if we can get a cow. So we got one cow. Her name was Honey. We milked her twice a day by hand. And that was it. We did some like under the table raw milk sales and things like that. But with a Holstein cow with 2 people, yeah, you get a lot of milk. And so I bought some cheese making books, and I just dove in and started experimenting and started making cheese then. And we also did some meat chickens and egg layers and a big garden and stuff like that. And then we moved to Iowa because, well, Renee is from Iowa originally, from 20 miles from where we are now, but it took us a little while to locate a farm. But it was kind of our goal. We knew once we moved back, we're going to try and find a farm, because that was, at that point, it was decided that I wanted my career to be dairy farmer and cheesemaker. Like, I already had kind of decided that was the goal. And I worked at Iowa State for a little over a year, as sort of a soils technician, working for a soils professor. And then I worked at Practical Farmers of Iowa, a nonprofit here in Iowa, that I think Katie has talked about before. I was the grazing coordinator, so I got to organize lots of great livestock and grazing events, pasture walks, and all kinds of fun stuff. And I got to learn a lot in that experience. That was great. And then in 2012, we finally found this farm here, and that's when we moved here.
So, I mean, from listening to the show that I'm always hesitant to talk to people about the size of farms because, people can do a lot of things on a small amount of land, and there are lots of people who have, huge acreages. But especially if you're talking about grazing cows, how much kind of pasture do you need for the animals that you're trying to raise?
So our farm here, Lost Lake Farm is what we call it, is 80 acres, more or less. So that's sort of the home farm. There is an organic farmer about 10 miles away has extra pasture so she does organic crops, but she also raises sheep. But she has pasture that's in awkward places that she can't graze her sheep because of fencing, and also it's like right next to like 100 acres of woods, and so there are a lot of coyotes and stuff like that, so it's dangerous for sheep. But at any rate, we can graze dry cows and heifers there, so that it really helps to take the pressure off of the home farm so that we can really manage it for the best quality grass. So that's the size. We still end up buying hay, although at the 10 to 12 cow scale, it probably will be a lot less. So we do cut some hay here, generally like first cut hay, and then we'll graze those acres after that in the year because, in our temperate environment, I'm assuming you're similar in Ontario, you get a ton of grass growth in May and June, and then it really slows off the rest of the year. And so either have too many livestock for the grass you don't have enough grass later in the year, or you have too much grass early in the year. So that's kind of how we try and balance things, is by how many animals we move to another place, how much hay we buy, and how much hay we make.
Sure. Now, as a cheesemaker, I know the quality of milk and quantity of milk makes a big difference. And so what breeds of animals are you milking, or what's kind of your ideal cow?
Believe it or not, that's a hard question to answer, but let's just say we have mostly crossbreds, and we have a few purebred brown Swiss. So those are the only purebreds we have. We did at one point have a purebred Ayrshire from Katie. She's no longer with us. We had her for, I want to say, 8 years or something like that. We never got any heifers that we were able to keep from her. That the only heifers we got from her were the years that she was bred to beef bulls.
Kevin, I have to say, her mother was an engagement gift for my in-laws. They're out of the last cows that came off this farm. Her mother has never given us a heifer that we could keep. She just calved earlier this week. She waited for it to be like 20 below and then was like, pop that calf out. Made a nice little bull calf, but same level of frustration there. Beautiful cow, no heifers. Anyway.
So at any rate, the crossbreds, we've experimented with various crosses, but without going into too much detail, I'll just say the breeds that go into our sort of breed rotation are Normandy, New Zealand Friesian, and New Zealand Jersey. And Brown Swiss, of course, as I mentioned before.
So, without knowing how tall those New Zealand breeds are, and knowing pretty well what Normandys are built like, how bad do the Brown Swiss stand out in your herd? Are they like 3 feet taller than everybody else, or because our Normandys, at least, they're pretty short and round. Of course, we have beef Normandys rather than dairy.
Well, so we don't have any pure Normandys. All the Normandys we have are crossed with Brown Swiss. Those make pretty big cows. It's the Jersey crosses that look like shrimps, but they all have so much attitude. They make up for their size with attitude. And we leave the horns on our cows, and the Jerseys seem to get extra long horns. Um, and so they seem to stand up for themselves fine. It's just kind of fitting them in the parlor that gets to be a challenge. So we can milk 4 cows at once in our parlor, but they're at an angle, so you milk between their back legs, but it's not as much as steep an angle as a herringbone. So it's the Trans Iowa parlor design. If anybody is familiar with that, there's no dividers between the cows, and so often the Jerseys will kind of go all the way forward to the breast rail, and then you have to reach forward to get to their udders. So that gets interesting. But luckily we don't have any pure Jerseys, but the New Zealand Frisian is slightly larger than a Jersey. So it kind of is like a Jersey in Holstein clothing. So the Frisian Jersey crosses are basically the size of a Jersey.
And are you using New Zealand genetics in part because they are better grazers? I mean, I know a lot of farms in New Zealand are on grass all year round, right? So is that part of the decision making for those genetics?
That's 100% of the decision making on those genetics.
Everyone has an origin story, but some stories hit you in the heart, and the story behind one of our past guests is totally one of those. It all started with a young kid named Kawani.
Yeah, Sean, the chicken guy short of Blooming Health Farms, didn't know he'd be a chicken farmer or that he'd be teaching you how to turn your flock into a business. It began with Kawani, a kid stuck in the court system who needed a second chance. He joined Sean at Blooming Health Farms to turn his life around.
One day, Sean showed Kawani how to sell fresh eggs at a local market. As Kawani started selling those eggs, Sean saw the real power in what he was doing. It wasn't just about the eggs. He was building skills and getting respect from the community. That one small act of selling eggs transformed his life.
And that's how Blooming Health Farms was born. Sean saw that selling eggs could be more than food, it could be a way to help others learn business skills and build their own futures. And now, through their online community called Pimp Your Flock, Blooming Health Farms is taking this mission even further.
Pimp Your Flock is a community for people who want to turn their passion for chickens into profits. You'll learn how to turn your flock into a real income source, and when you join, you're supporting Blooming Health Farms so they can help more kids like Kawani build a better future.
So if you're looking for a way to turn your flock into a business and be part of something bigger, join Pimp Your Flock at pimpyourflock.com. Not only will you learn the skills to make your egg business grow, but you'll also be part of a community that's changing lives.
Head over to pimpyourflock.com today and let's make an impact together, one egg at a time. And so do you milk seasonally or are you year-round?
We have been year round up till now, but starting this year, we're going to be milking seasonally. But transitioning is a bit of a challenge getting all of the calvings lined up. But the bulk of our calvings will be in from like mid-March through sometime in May. But there are going to be a few stragglers that are in early July. Hopefully we can move them up by, a few weeks every year and they'll eventually get with the program. But yeah, we're trying to milk seasonally as both to time things with the grazing season and also in an effort to simplify things more.
So I assume you guys do AI with that few cows that you're not running a bull?
Yes, we do AI. We have never had a bull on our place. Given that the challenge with our scale is, we especially buying different breeds and so forth, is we don't use that many, and generally the fewest number of straws you can order from a bull is 20, and that so I can't use new bulls every year because it takes me a couple of years to go through those. I mean, I guess I could toss them, but that gets expensive. But yes, all AI here, which is challenging in itself. And we try not to use artificial hormones to sync breeding and stuff like that if we can avoid it. We're not certified organic or anything, so we're not completely excluded from it, but I prefer not to use those. So I generally do it just by observation.
So I know you said that you've listened to almost all the episodes of our podcast, which means that you knew what you were getting into when you agreed to do this. And you've known me for a long time, so you know that I have absolutely no ability to filter what I say or ask polite questions. I know that, you've mentioned that you took last year off, and I know that you've told us that it was to focus on your mental health. And you know, mental health and ag is something that we've talked about a fair amount on this show, but mostly with mental health providers or practitioners, people on the other side of the couch. So I'd really love to hear your thoughts on how we can prioritize mental health from a producer perspective and how that worked for you. And I guess we can, have some more questions because that was pretty like, how about if you just dump your entire life out for us? As far as you're comfortable, what brought you to the place of making the decision to take a year off?
Well, my wife has been framing it as we had a health crisis or a mental health crisis, but it wasn't, which makes it sound like there was sort of an event or some specific time. There was no one sort of crisis. It was sort of building over many years, becoming more and more challenging. Well, so for me, depression is the biggest struggle. That said, depression and anxiety always go hand in hand somewhat. It's just which is sort of in the driver's seat for somebody. So for me, it's like I get down and have all these negative thoughts about myself, and so then the swirling negative thoughts add on anxiety about the things that I'm not doing and this and that and what. Depression and anxiety, there are many common experiences with all of them, with both of them, but it's also very individual for everybody and how people react and so forth. And some people, they might react by substance abuse. Others react by overworking and just avoiding the problem that way, which I think is very common with depressed people. It affects my motivation to do pretty much anything. So when you are self-employed, that is, regardless of whether it's ag or anything else, that's challenging because you know there's nobody waiting for you to come clock in. There are just an never-ending list of tasks that need doing, which of course you can prioritize and say this is what has to happen today, but to a depressed brain, it just seems overwhelming and impossible, and you're like, why even start? So to get back to the question a little bit more directly, it was becoming more and more of a problem, and it seemed like either I was going to drive our business into the ground and start to have animal health issues because I wasn't milking the cows at a regular time, or most of the time, our cows have a great life. It's just were some times where it end up being, milking is 6 hours late or something like that, which is just uncomfortable for cows. Um, and it just seemed like either we needed to give up and do something else with our lives, or we needed to take some time to figure out how to make this work. And it's challenging with a dairy. It's challenging with any business to put it on pause. But given the small number of cows we had, we thought maybe there's some way we can find people that want to take on extra cows for a year, or families that want to experiment with having a family cow for a year. And so we decided to try that, and so we set up these arrangements basically where no cash was exchanged. People get a cow, or some had a couple cows, and they provide all the feed and care, and they get the milk and any calves that are born during that time. Plus, they were free to send me text messages or call me with questions anytime. So free advisor, um, which some took advantage of a lot, and some not at all. Um, the the ones that were not at all had dairy cows previously, um, and so that is how we managed that. And then here at the home farm, we kept the sort of the young stock who were just growing and not providing it, where we would have had to pay somebody essentially to feed them, because they wouldn't have been giving anything to the person caring for them. So we just, we grazed them here, and fed them hay in the winter. But that left us with a lot of extra pasture. So in order to continue to pay our rent and our loan payments, we sold hay this past year. So that's been our main sort of revenue source. But our expenses were way down during that time. So that's kind of logistically how we made that happen.
I'm wondering, and I mean, part of this is obviously self-employment is already hard enough with mental health things, but also there's no accountability of a boss or coworkers asking you if you're okay. And dairy cows, I think, maybe of all the ag things, are probably the least forgiving of any amount of schedule change or chaos or anything. They tend to be real set in their ways. Um, I just totally lost track of where I was going. It's gone. Um, how did you decide how long of a break to take? Was it calendar based, or was there some point that you knew you would be ready to go back, or did you just set a date and say, you know, this is what we're doing and it's just going to have to happen? Or how did you figure that out?
It was kind of calendar based or season based. So it was October, November of 2023 when the cows were moving to other places. Um, but we didn't want to start back milking and making cheese going into a winter, which is our slow time for marketing. And so we thought, let's give ourselves 2 winters and 1 growing season and start up in the spring. I guess the reason that we try and start calving in March as opposed to May, which is what May or June, which is what a lot of sort of grass-fed seasonal beef operations will do, or some dairies as well. But for us, um, so farmers markets start the first weekend in May. Um, a lot of our cheeses take, um, well, I mean, some of them age for 6 months or more, but the there are several of them that are in like the 6 to 8 week range, and so that means we start up, we make some of those cheeses and have them ready to sell by early May. So that was kind of how the timing worked out. But I will also say, when we started up, we our message to the public probably, I think, was, we're going to start up again in the spring of 2025. But internally, it wasn't a definite thing that we were going to come back, um, because mental health is unpredictable, and it's you can't for sure say that a year of focusing on mental health is going to make you more able to be productive and happy being you, which is still not a sure thing.
I guess I'm wondering the other aspect. I'm wondering what sort of mental health improvement techniques worked for you, I guess, because I see a lot of like resting and meditating, and meditation is incredibly helpful, but I think that a lot of farmers are not real sitting down resting kind of people. um and I think, in rural areas, and with the restrictions of having children and having things that still have to, I think there are different needs for a lot of farmers, just as far as what mental health help is more helpful. So I'm wondering if there was anything that you found particularly more useful than other things.
Well, let me first say that um, I have been on prescription medications before this year and through this year. There have been some changes this year to the prescriptions, but that is an important piece of this. Um, and I will also say, for some people, that's all it takes is going to your family doctor, or you know finding a psychiatrist or some prescriber, um, mental health prescriber, and getting on a medication, and you might get lucky and get the right one the first time, which has not been the case for me. It's been almost a 10-year journey to find the right mix. Um, and I think I'm on the right mix right now, but it's still, that alone isn't enough. It brings the depression and anxiety down to a level that's manageable enough that I can do these other practices. Um, and so, um, here's what works for me right now. And like you said, you know, it won't work for everybody. Everybody's different. Um, and right now I'm still, I'm still not working full time. I'm still like, mental health is still my focus right now in January. By the time this comes out, I might be a little bit more ramping up and so forth. And so I don't know how my practices are going to fit in. I'm trying not to worry about it too much now.
Sorry if I just totally spiked your anxiety about something that'll happen months from now. Because, yeah, I have the feeling that our brains work pretty similarly, and I feel like the fact that we're wearing matching clothes is probably just a symptom of that.
Okay, so meditation is a big, so I meditate most days twice a day. So I meditate in the morning, I meditate before bed, and I practice various mindfulness practices throughout the day. Now, for anybody who's not familiar with meditation, it's not just sitting and saying Om, or you're not trying to think of nothing. Now, there are a lot of different ways of meditating in different fields. The primary one that I use is called mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, which was developed by a group of psychologists, and they published a book called The Mindful Way Through Depression. I highly recommend it for anybody dealing with anxiety or depression. And there's a workbook as well. But basically, think of meditation as you're practicing focusing on the present. You're practicing your awareness, focusing your awareness on your current experience and accepting it as it is, not trying to change anything. Often, so you're going to get distracting thoughts. You're going to think about, oh, I should do, as soon as I'm done with this, I need to do that. And then you're going to get the follow-up thought, oh, shoot, I shouldn't be thinking about that. I should be thinking about now. Now, this is all sort of a mind-bendy thing, and this is why it's a practice. And so it's something you practice every day, and it's hard, and it continues to be hard for me every day, is you notice the thought of, I should be doing this, and you say, okay, that happened. You notice, I had the counter thought, I should not be having that thought, and you notice that too, and you accept that, and you say, that's okay. That's what's happening in my brain right now. And you're not trying to make yourself not feel down. See, that's the key, is accepting, I'm having these feelings, these emotions. Let me explore what they feel like. What are the thoughts that are going through my brain? Let me notice them. What does my body feel like right now? What does it feel like just with the breath coming in and out? That's the most simple practice. And so the idea of the meditation is then throughout the day that you're present in the present moment, experiencing, because, no matter what you do, there are going to be things that you have to do that are, some things are more fun than others. Sometimes you're going to have to do unpleasant things. But if you're present for it, you have to do it. If you're present for it and just fully in that experience, it's less unpleasant than if you're trying to not think about it and just get through it. This is my experience. So that's why, so it's changing the whole attitude towards existing toward my daily life, and just trying to accept what my experience is. So that's a lengthy explanation of, and you can feel free to edit and cut it down to shorter if you want, if I'm being too in depth. But so that's one of the really important ones. The other one for me is exercising. Any of these practices are really hard if you're in the depths of a mental health crisis. That's not the time to add new practices. Exercising is a proven way to help stave off depression and anxiety. But if you're in a depressive episode, if somebody tells you that, you're going to want to punch them in the face, just to be honest. So for me, depression and anger are very closely linked. It sounds weird, but they're very closely linked. When I'm depressed, I am very cranky. I get short-tempered with the cows, which then, of course, the cows, they shoot that right back at you by pooping more in the parlor, whatever. But at any rate, I exercise at least 6 days a week right now. And get this, so this is also a parenting podcast, I know. What really helped me, so I've been throughout the years, but especially this past year, I've really been trying to, focus in and get regular with my workouts, because I haven't been working physically as much, but also because it's a practice that I'm trying to get into for my mental health, to feel better. Not, it would be great if I could get a gig as an underwear model for a side income, um, you know, and maybe I think Duluth Trading Company might be my go-to place when I get to that point.
I think you've got a big Duluth vibe. I could see that.
But the main reason I do it is to feel better physically and mentally. That's um, that's the main reason I do it. But so here are the things that have helped the most to keep with that. So I have a friend who's also a farmer, a hobby farmer, I guess, but and he lives maybe in 45 minutes away, but we meet sort of halfway in between at a park every week if we can manage it, and we go for a run or a walk together. And um, so that motivates me to stay in shape enough to be able to do that with him. And I look forward to that. That's always bring, I always feel better after that because not only have I worked out, I've spent some time with a friend. So that adds the other, social, socializing is an important aspect for mental and spiritual health as well. So that's, and then the other big one is, my son, who's 13, when he ran cross country this past fall, and when he finished the cross country season, he said he wanted to start doing some strength training to get stronger. And I said, awesome, let's do that together. And so we created a workout plan and we do strength training together 5 days a week. And he wanted to stay in his running shape because he's going to run track in the spring as well. So he does cardio every day as well. And I'm like, well, if he's going to do that, I'm going to do it too. Um, and so, yeah, so we do strength training 5 days a week. And so it's a great thing that we can do together. Um, and, and then, so that's a cool thing, father son thing that we do together. And it keeps me motivated and makes us both do it because we're doing it together. And, so that's a really cool thing. So those are the two big ones is the meditation and, and working out. And so obviously when I'm milking every day and making cheese, it's going to be a lot harder to fit those things in, but I know how important they are. I probably won't fit as much in as I'm doing now, but I know how important they are. So I'm going to try and fit them in. That said, I just want to touch on the other aspects of what sort of this prescription for me, the full prescription, not the prescription medications, which I already touched on, but also I try to, I guess this might fit under exercise as well, but for me, it's different. I try to go on a walk every day and not, and so I walk on the farm. And the key to that is to walk and walk to walk and to experience nature and to not let all the things that I see, become work thoughts, just to notice that fence post that needs to be fixed and just notice it as a thing that maybe I could address at some point, but not to be creating a mental to-do list while I'm doing my walk. So that time in I spend a lot of time outside in my work, but having non-work time walking outside, is important for me. And yes, having socializing time with my family, with somebody outside of my family, and all adults. I'm almost 44 years old. Socializing, spending time with friends it's different than when you were younger. And so like going out to the bar or whatever, like it doesn't even sound that interesting to me anymore. And I don't have friends, most of my friends are farmers. And so, I can't, sometimes socializing just means that I text with people a couple times a week, and check in with, oh, isn't it nice that the sun's shining this week, or whatever, So you need to get physical, mental, social, and spiritual. Those are kind of the aspects that I try to include in my mental health prescription. And the spiritual side for me is that walk. For somebody else, it might be going to church or praying. And I guess arguably the meditation could, prayer and meditation could fill the same thing. But those are kind of the aspects that I try to include in my life for keeping myself, for enjoying being me the best I can.
I think it's really interesting what you said about taking that walk and not letting it become adding to your to-do list, because I think when you are self-employed or when you work from home, and especially if you're a farmer, any time that you're out from under the blankets in your bed, it's a continual onslaught of shit you ought to be doing. And it can be really easy to let that become a horrible experience. And I think there's a lot to be said for the meditative practice of leaving your bed and not just immediately being swamped by every crooked fence post and every buttonweed and every whatever else you see. Um, and touching on what you said about medication, I feel like for myself, as someone who's also been on medication for quite a few years, I feel like it gives me the slack to work out the knots, because I feel like, if you try and untie a knot but the rope is tight at both ends, you can't untangle it because there's nowhere to go with it. And for me, medication feels like it loosens the ends enough that I can do the meditation, the exercise, the actual sleeping, the seeing other humans, the going to therapy, all that other work to untangle the middle of the mess, but without loosening those ends, it's never going to happen. It's just a continual thing. And now let Arlene get an word in edgewise again.
The one thing that came up for me when you were talking, Kevin, is especially with the ages of your kids, I'm wondering about how you framed your discussions around both, the changes you're making in the farm and the changes you're making in your lifestyle. And, with also the acknowledgments that we know that whether it's genetic or, how all of these things potentially transmit to our kids, but we know that those of us who struggle with mental health, that our kids are at higher risk of having those same struggles. So I'm just wondering about how you frame those discussions with your children and within your family.
We try to be as upfront as possible, and as honest as possible with them without being too grim. The two kids is very very different. Uh, with my daughter, it's kind of opened up um, some conversations to talk about her feelings, um, her emotional experiences. So I think that's been helpful for both of us, and kind of a bonding experience. And like she got a couple books, about, the one is about like my body for girls or something like that, and then another one is, I don't remember what it's called, but it's something about my emotions. Um, and we read through that book together, and there are like little assignments in there, and we could kind of work through them, and so it kind of made for, and a lot of it I could like kind of see, it was framed a little differently, but a lot of it I could see from some of my, therapy and different mental health things I've been through, that, I like, yeah, I know what this is, that we're talking about here. And so there are times where I feel really bad, when I can't leave the couch all day or whatever. And, um, sometimes what kills me the most about that is my kids seeing that and being a bad example or whatever. But, um, but yeah, it's been a good opportunity to have some good conversations.
I think I want to acknowledge the fact that, especially as farmers and as men, I'm sure that having conversations about mental health are not easy. And I want to thank you for being able to have this discussion with us. Because, like Katie said, I mean, mental health in ag is more discussable now than it was before, but so often it's theoretical, or like she said, we've been talking to therapists or people working, in support roles, but people are less willing to talk about their personal experiences. So thank you for being able to open up with us today, and I'm sure that it will make a difference for people. Okay, so we're going to transition to another topic that is, oh, sorry, Katie, do you want to do one more thing before I go on?
I was going to say that I love Kevin. I don't think you're setting a bad example. I think you're setting a really good example because you're showing your kids how to take care of yourself and how to take the time you need and how to respect yourself on the days that don't feel very respectable. And I love the idea of getting to a point where we're not doing podcasts about mental first aid and, crisis centers and emergency lines and things. And the idea that we could get to the point that we could be talking about teaching our kids the skills before they need them instead of getting to a point where it is a crisis. And, I mean, there's no, sadly, but possibly just as well, there's no emergency immediate fix for depression. And I think we do get this idea that either you can meditate for 10 minutes one time and you'll be fixed, or you can take a pill one time and A, that first pill will work, and B, it won't give you worse side effects than whatever you had, and C, you'll be magically fixed and that'll be the end of it. And that's not how it works. But I think you're showing your kids a very good example of getting through it and making it work and still doing the thing. And you're getting this time to engage with your kids, and it sounds like both of your kids are learning really good coping skills now, before it's I mean, being an 11-year-old girl, I have done. I've never been a 13-year-old boy, but I have been 13. Um, they need those skills now and they'll need them more in the future. And I think anything we can do to provide them with that and to set an example for other people. Yeah, go ahead. You're just like raising your hand over there.
Yeah, I just wanted to say you triggered one more thought that I wanted to share before we move on to the next topic. That people like to hear the story that, um, I took this pill or went to therapy for so many weeks or months and I'm better now. Depression isn't a problem. That's not my story. Depression is likely going to be a problem or a part of my life for the rest of my life. And so treating it almost like a chronic illness is a big part of how I have come to approach it. And and part of that, as Katie was talking about, is that there are going to be days where I am not up to what I would prefer to be up to. And and so I need to take things slower. My wife might need to jump in and do more for me, and so forth. And so that's another big part of the picture is having grace, giving myself grace, and saying, well, I guess I'll just be cliche here and use the saying, it's okay not to be okay. That some days I'm just not going to feel great, and being mad about that and trying to fight it doesn't make it go away faster. On the contrary, it makes it worse. And if I just accept this is how I feel today. Maybe I'll take on less. I'll give myself more time on the couch, or I'll take a nice long hot bath. Yes, I love hot baths. Um, and so, yes, that's an important part of it.
I think depression very much is a chronic illness. And I think part of it, too, and with chronic illness and with mental health, is that we don't want to think about the fact that even when you do everything right and you take your medication and you meditate and you walk and you know, do your yoga and whatever else you do for your physical health and all of that, that you'll still have shitty days. That's just, it wouldn't be a chronic thing if it just went away. It would be a thing that just went away. Um, it's obviously not nearly as um, easily packaged as inspirational as saying, I took this one medication and now my life is perfect, you know. But I think it is really important to just give yourself that grace and that time to work towards tomorrow being easier, even when today isn't. And now we really can move on, Arlene. I think we're really done.
So Kevin is going to cover all of the really hard topics today because he told us he was willing to do it. So we're just going all in. So he also mentioned that he was okay with talking about money, which a lot of farmers and, well, people in general don't really want to talk about money. But you mentioned to us talking about using kind of non-traditional financing or investing models in your business. So I was curious about what that looks like for you guys.
Yeah. Um, so as we were getting started and we had written our business plan, um, you know, 10, 12 years ago now, um, we approached, we kind of looked into every possibility we could, I mean, so the first was getting access to land. Um, and, and we're not quite as non-traditional there. I, um, we realized that with our income level, we were not going to be able to buy the size of Iowa farm that we needed, because where we are, um, you know, $10,000 an acre is cheap. And if we need 80 acres, well, you can do that math. Um, it's way more than a home mortgage. Well, most people's home mortgage. Maybe if you're in California, that's a home mortgage. But let's just say that regardless of, everybody that I talked to said this is the most thorough business plan we've ever seen. So it wasn't my business planning or business plan writing skills, um, which, that was also not very helpful feedback. Um, but it's like, oh, it's a really awesome business plan. This is really exciting and the most thorough we've ever seen. But we're not going to give you money because it's too risky an idea because we've never seen this idea before.
Yeah, so good work, but we're not going to back you.
Yeah. And I went down that tangent about the farm. Long story short, I eventually did send my business plan to my uncle and aunt who ended up buying the land. So my uncle and aunt own the land. We rent it from them. We subsectioned off the sort of the house and buildings and bought that with a home loan. So we own that ourselves with the bank. Um, but we still have a sort of a long-term lease with my uncle and aunt. So that's nice that we were able to have that for land access. But the second part was, we're starting up a business. And so, you need farm equipment, you need processing equipment. We needed a processing building, and none of that is cheap. And we also needed some, startup, just sort of general startup seed money for getting operations going. Eventually, we landed on, we created an LLC, which was a business structure that allowed us to take on investors. And so it was a long process to find the right people. And my wife she preferred, we did end up having a few people that are related to us, as investors, but she did not want it to be just a family thing because, she is uncomfortable with turning family relationships into business relationships more than you have to, because she's seen so many examples of that ruining families. So we have, let's see, 11 different, most of them are couples, some are single people, but 11 different investors in addition to us who are co-owners of Lost Lake Farm LLC. And so they own anywhere from 1% to 7% or something like that. And Renee and I own 53%. It might be up from there because we've put more money in it, but it's around 53%. So we own the majority stake. But that is how we got most of our sort of seed funding was from people. And so those people then at the end of every year, well, we haven't done any distributions up till now, but if we were to become immensely profitable, they would get a share of the profits. But thus far, when we have had profitable years, it's essentially stayed in the business. But the way LLCs work in the States is that it's a pass through. So it gets taxed on your individual tax return, the business income. So if you own 7% and we have $1,000 profit, you get whatever 7% of $1,000 is. It was $70 or something. I'm not good at mental math. But it would be what you would be taxed on as investment income. Now, for me, since I'm actively engaged in the business, it's self-employment income, and I'm not paid a salary from the business at this point. So it's only our share of the ownership that pays me. But so that was that. And then the second thing we did is we also offered, when we were courting investors, a second sort of less risky opportunity. So those people haven't gotten any money back. Theoretically, they could at some point cash out and we buy out their share for whatever. And, hopefully at that point it'll be worth more. And so they will have gained some equity over the, over the period that they've left the investment in. But other people, loaned us money. So we had a lawyer. Did we have a lawyer? Yeah, we had a lawyer draw up loan agreements that we then signed with individuals. So rather than having one bank loan or USDA loan, because USDA also turned us down for all of our various requests, small and large. So we had, I'm not sure, several different loans, from, ranging from like $5,000 to $20,000 loans from individuals. And then we set up a repayment plan. And then we can also, some of those we've set up where there's like 2 years where it's just accumulating interest that's capitalizing over that period before repayment starts. Um, and so there's more flexibility. And then sometimes we were like, oh, cash flow is still tight, and it's a lot easier. You could call those or email up those people and say, how would you feel about if we had one more year of grace period before we start repayment, and then we either have the repayment period be 4 years instead of 5 years, or be still 5 years, but it's starting a year later. It's been different in every instance, but it allows for more flexibility, and people aren't investing money that they need back right away. So it's, people have been very understanding and good to work with. And so that's how we've done that. It's, it certainly creates some added work administratively. And then I will say the other downside is, so I said the USDA wouldn't lend us, like beginning farmer loans or any of that when we were looking to start, but it makes doing other USDA farm programs more challenging because, um, so like EQIP program is a program through USDA where you can get cost share funds for various conservation projects, and like, so like rotational grazing is a conservation practice that you can get cost share funding to add fencing infrastructure, and it's just as one example, but in order to qualify for that, you can't be over a certain, I can't remember if it's yeah, I think it's a net worth that you can't be over, like $2 million net worth or something like that, which is not a problem for us, might be for some of our investors. I don't know. It just overcomplicates it, and we would have to have a lot more paperwork because it would have to be through the LLC, because like the lease is in the LLC's name, everything is in that, and so I can't do it as me as an individual because I don't have actual farm income as an individual farmer. And so that has meant that we haven't been able to take part in any of those programs. And maybe I'm, missing something and overcomplicating it, but we were looking into it, and it didn't look like it was gonna, it's not just, there are some other things that I'm forgetting, but there are some other things other than just that, net worth cap that, because of the LLC, we don't really qualify. So that's kind of disappointing. Like USDA wouldn't give us money, and so we went this other route. So then now we don't qualify for other USDA money. So,
Yeah, right. You got too creative, and now, yeah, it doesn't work into their paperwork. Basically, like all those grant programs just end up being about, do you fit inside the box of what it is they decide the criteria.
For our non-American listeners, the USDA is the United States Department of Agriculture. And like Kevin was saying, USDA can be great if you fit inside their boxes, but it also can feel a lot like when you apply for a job and it says, must have 10 years experience, but you can't get the experience because you can't get the job. It's one of those circular kind of problems. So, because we're just going all in on this and we're going to be paying your therapy bills for months now, Kevin, sorry. How do you navigate?
hey, I've got great insurance. It's all covered.
Oh, good, good. So that being a doctorate of soil science must pay better than I anticipated. I assume Renee's just like Scrooge McDucking around in her tremendous pile of dirt study money, I'm sure. I like to call it dirt just to see if the soil scientists freak out.
I won't tell her.
It's okay. She'll probably hear it. How do you navigate the fact that, like a lot of American farms, one member of your family is presumably carrying a larger share of the expenses for the family, at least, if not for the farm operation? And also shit like insurance.
This never really been an issue for us. And
Well, you better hope she doesn't listen to this, or it's going to be an issue and then there will be trouble.
Well, she knows. It's not like it'll be a surprise for her.
no, well, so let me back up a little bit and say, uh, early on in our marriage, well, the first 8 years we were married, she was a graduate student and I was working full time. Now she did have a research assistantship during that time, so she wasn't without pay. Um, but sort of I was the one, making the larger share of our household income and also the one with more, let's say, disposable free time, um, to, um, to do housework and so forth. Um, and, and she may have a different memory of it, so I should probably not say too much about that. But I definitely did a larger share then than I do now. Let's put it that way, of housework and parenting and so forth. Um, and so it sort of felt like, um, well, there were a few transition years there where she was she was done with school and working full time, and I wasn't farming full time yet. So there were some transition years where it was kind of a little different, but it sort of felt like, sort of like, oh, it's my turn for my graduate school, um, is kind of how it felt. But, um, yeah, I mean, at this point, she's essentially the sole earner of our household. And as far as, I don't think that stresses her out. I I sometimes feel a little bit bad about that, but, um, none of that pressure comes from her. She seems that totally fits her expectations. Like she knew from when we got married that I wanted to be a farmer, so she expected to have to work off the farm, from the start because she grew up in a farming community and she knows that's generally how it works. Um, and, um, yeah, we are not, flush with cash, but we do, we're not poor either. And we, um, have excellent health insurance, and that is so amazing. Um, look, I I've had, therapy for years and never even had to pay a copay. And so mental health has been covered really well. There have been some struggles with some of the more intensive things I've done. Like I went to a a residential therapy program this time last year, um, and insurance put up a little bit more of a fight for that, but, they did cover the vast majority of it, so that still was good. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I wouldn't say it's not an issue. It's just sort of, a fact of life that's how it is. Um, and there have been many times where I've been down in the dumps about myself and my contributions to our family, and I've said, maybe we should just give up the farm and I can just, you know, even if I sat at home and did nothing, sometimes it feels like it would be contributing more. Um, that's the depressed mind talking. Or if I went and worked at a gas station and just brought in, that I'd be able to contribute more and think how much more flush our family could be if I brought in that big Casey's money, uh, or something like that. But, those are just the swirling negative thoughts that I can have at times. And Renee says she's all in with the farm. Um, and this isn't just my dream. It's our thing. Um, and she has taken on a lot of the work, um, as well, especially on the cheese business side. Um, she does most of the cheese packaging and, all of the website maintenance and like most of the marketing stuff. So she does so much. I don't know, she's an amazing person. And she's totally on board with the farm. So she doesn't see it as something that's taking away from our lifestyle or pulling from our goals. She sees it as part of our family goals. Um, and that running a dairy here gives us the reason to be able to continue living here in the country on this beautiful farm.
So you kind of already talked about, how life and work have changed over the years. How has that changed when it comes to kids, like childcare and how much they're, integrated into the farm life and those types of things? How has that changed as your kid, like from when they were young to now that they're getting a little bit older and more independent?
Yeah, it's amazing how things change over the years. Let me first say, on the note of Renee being an amazing person, she was a graduate student when both of our kids were born. So she was getting her PhD, which is, if, for anybody who's never known anybody in graduate school or has not been to graduate school, um, I've known, I've been married to someone who was in graduate school for 8 years. And so over those years, and she was a postdoc at Iowa State for 5 years after that. So I've known a lot of graduate students over the years. I feel like I kind of know a lot about the culture of academia. It's very stressful. People work a ton. Um, and everybody goes through at least one mental health crisis at some point during their graduate school career. So Renee went through 2 pregnancies, raised 2 infants while a graduate student, which is in itself amazing. With our first kid, we kind of both had semi-flexible jobs. So we would both, when he was an infant, we took turns working with him, with us. So like I worked from home 1 day a week. And this was before 2020, before that was more common. And I think then I kind of shifted my schedule around so I could like be home another day a week. And she actually took him to the office with her sometimes. And her office mate also had a baby, like within a few months of that. So they were both pregnant together, and they both brought infants at times. So it was kind of funny in some ways. So that was kind of that season of life. And then we were living on the farm when the second was born. And I actually was, working, managing some hog confinements at that time. And so I think I watched the kids 3 or 4 days a week, at that point, but I would go at like 3 or 4 in the morning and go and do my hog tours and then come home in time for Renee to go to work. And then I think Grandma watched the kids 1 day a week and something along those lines. So that was that season of life. And then kind of once I started dairying and making cheese, I sort of withdrew from the active childcare part, but we were also starting to enter school age. But it's kind of that, of course, has changed over the years as they've gotten older and more capable of taking part. Um, and at times we've paid them like they're really good at helping in the cheesery with certain tasks, especially like packaging cheese, labeling cheese. They've got really efficient at that. Um, and sometimes some cheese making tasks. Farm stuff generally, we haven't had like regular tasks for them to do. It's been more sort of like as if they want to come along with me and do something, but sometimes there are things where they actually are helping but we haven't generally paid for farm work, up to this point. Um, but I will say we have, we don't have any cab tractors, so we have never had like kids riding along on tractors. Just hasn't been an option for us. I guess when they were really little, I would like drive around the yard with them on my lap, which, maybe some people would say is unsafe, but I was not driving fast. I wasn't like doing loader work. I wasn't doing crazy stuff. Um, but no riding along in our open cab tractors. Just not safe. So that makes things challenging, sometimes to include the kids. Um, and now they're more capable, and so yeah, like I said, it's kind of, we give them the option to do things, but we don't have required things. They have required chores in the house, but not on the farm. So we're trying not to push it on them too much.
Yeah, that makes sense. We pretty much ask all of our guests this question, so I know you'll be expecting it. What is your favorite thing about raising your kids with a connection to the land and being on a farm?
So I I was having trouble coming up with an answer to that because, um, not because I don't love raising our kids on the farm and so forth. So I decided to ask my kids what their favorite part was about growing up on a farm. So I asked each of them this morning. And the girl child said she loves, having so much nature around her home and being able to go out and explore nature, and she loves cows. And the boy child said, um, he loves having space that he can go roam around in. So that was their answers. So, and my answer was going to be something along those lines as well.
Well, that's what matters, right? What they get out of it.
So, what is your biggest parenting struggle these days?
It's a hard question, and I've thought about it a lot. Well, honestly, we're at a really great stage right now where parenting really isn't a struggle.
You shouldn't say that out loud.
And so I'm sorry, but or maybe I could say there will be those periods in life where parenting is just a joy. Um, but I guess I'll say, I'm gonna say, two things. I'm gonna say the sort of obvious short answer that probably everybody deals with and that has been always a challenge, and that's screen time. Trying to keep them from watching 8 hours of screen time a day. Um, and um, the 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 more nuanced answer is a separate area, and this is kind of more me personally, and I it is balancing, talking about nutrition, health, and fitness with, um, not trying to focus on body size, shape, weight, those sorts of things.
Yep, I hear.
Especially we've all been getting more into fitness in the last few months. Um, and so it's hard to not be into fitness and weightlifting without having goals for your body. Um, so trying to focus on the process and personal growth and getting stronger and not on, looking better. Um, and I I have a personal weight loss goal right now, which the kids know about, but I'm trying to focus on like the reason I have a weight loss goal isn't because I want to be skinnier. Yes, the underwear modeling contract with the Duluth Trading Company would be awesome, but
I'll make sure to tag them in this episode, Kevin, so that they hear your uh you know your willingness.
yeah, I do wear underwear from them, and pants. Um, but to focus on the process, the fact that the reason I have a weight loss goal isn't to be skinnier. It's because having that goal helps me to focus my mind on the things that are better for my body. So eating better. So the biggest change I've made with my diet is I'm not eating sugar right now. And I mean, not, I don't like look at every label and say, oh, there's added sugar. I won't eat this. But I don't eat desserts. I don't eat candy. I don't drink pop. Um, and then, the exercising, because there are so many benefits for my physical health and my mental health, both with the diet and the exercise. So those things that I'm doing that are good for me and for my body, and having that goal is, and continuing to work towards it is, sort of narrows that focus, but it's not about the body shape. So, and I'm focusing on myself for that because, um, you know, my kids, kids should not have weight loss goals, and they do not. Um, but also, when we're talking about their fitness and their fitness goals and we're talking about, I mean, with any kids, any age, well, I don't know, most kids at most ages, um, getting them to eat healthy is an ongoing daily struggle, challenge, conversation, different levels depending on where you are or your kids or the age or whatever. Right now at this stage, they have good understanding of what healthy eating looks like. Um, and, um, but they still have very strong likes and dislikes. Um, and so just trying to focus on the process and on trying to include healthy things and trying to instead of saying, even though I'm not eating sugar, saying, well, you as teens and preteens, you need to take in a lot of calories, because not only are you growing every day, you're also exercising, working out every day, and it takes a lot of calories to feed all that, and um, and actually having some extra fat on your body is important as a reserve, um, and but if you don't, that's okay too. But we're not doing ab exercises to get six pack abs. We're doing it to get stronger because that's good for our bodies, and it will help performance in track this spring and things like that. So, you know, maybe I'm rambling a bit now, but that's
That's okay.
trying to frame those conversations so that it's not about body shape and body image, because that's a big issue for any any teen or preteen, girls and boys.
Yes, definitely. So I know advice is always tricky, but do you have a piece of parenting advice that you have either learned or someone shared with you that you would want to share with somebody else?
Okay, here's the only parenting advice I feel qualified to give. I'm going to say every child is different. Enjoy the children you've got because they're all great in some ways, and don't try and turn them into little mini me's because they're probably going to be different than you. And just appreciate the people they're becoming because it's pretty amazing and magical.
Love it.
So we ask all of our guests, if you were going to dominate a category at the county fair, what would it be?
This one's pretty easy for me. Cheesemaking, hands down. And I actually know that in fact.
Could you go? Do you think you could go past county fair and go like state level on cheese making?
I was just going to say that, but I mean, our county fair does not have cheese competitions, but we have at the Iowa State Fair. We have won several blue ribbons for our cheese, and we several years back won best of show of the whole dairy products show. So
what the ribbon is that? Like a really big blue one?
Can't remember if maybe it was a purple ribbon. I can't remember. I'd have to.
It's actually just a box of lactate.
I can't remember. I'd have to go. We have it somewhere, but I'd have to really go back and look at my photos to find that ribbon. I can't remember the color.
That cheese. That's a good category.
Kevin, I don't know if you heard this episode, but in Canada, the blue ribbon is what, second place?
Yes, yeah, red's first.
This caused quite a controversy because they were so confused about us being excited about blue ribbons.
Oh no, we know. You were the ones that don't us. As you...
Canada, you're up there. That's what we need to know about you, okay?
But I'm pretty sure that actually from our other guests, because I have asked, I'm pretty sure that we follow the UK model. So I think that probably UK, Australia, New Zealand are all red ribbons are number one, but you guys like to be different. So you'd probably sum up at some point, they probably just switched it around.
Red ribbons, red coats seems like a vibe. I don't know. I will say though, Kevin, if we have like a barnyard language cheese making contest or a dairy products contest, I will volunteer to judge that. And maybe also cookie baking, like if people want to bake cookies to dunk into milk or bread to put cheese on, like I will volunteer for all of this.
all the baking and dairy products, Katie's in. All right, we will move into our cussing and discussing segment. Listeners, as you know, you can submit yours with our SpeakPipe or by email. Katie, what are your cussing and or discussing this week?
Kevin, what you were talking about teaching your kids and that. My cussing and discussing is kids watching your actions, especially when they call you out on things that you're doing that you said you weren't going to do, or that you told them not to do, or that you said you were going to do and you haven't done it yet. And so help me, we got an electronic calendar, which has been amazing. But now my kids can see if I am late on a task that I set for myself. And my daughter especially comes down this morning. First thing she says is, "Mommy, putting the Christmas tree away is on your list. You are 3 days late. How about if I help you?"
And for the rest, January 21st when we're doing this episode. So
it is January 21st right now.
It's almost a month after.
Yeah. But yes, sometimes, not even in a depressive way, I want to lay on the couch and eat chocolate and read a book, and I don't want anyone to talk to me. And my kids are like, "But Mommy, you have stuff to do. Mommy, you said we can't drink pop. I want chocolate. I want to watch TV." Whatever. Like, just go away and quit judging me, you little shits. Just stop with the listening to what I say about things you should be doing. These rules are for you, not for me. They're just ruining it. And I found out that I can't give myself 5,000 stars for taking down the Christmas tree, which is what I tried to do. Arlene just disappeared. Kevin, what do you have to cuss and discuss today?
I think I'm going to cuss and discuss the mental health system. Now, I know we've come a long ways since, you know, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, when, it was just a no-no to even talk about, or when, somebody who had a mental health crisis was just institutionalized and put out of sight. But man, it is so hard to navigate the system. Um, people say, oh, go to therapy. Well, finding the right therapist can be really hard because even though they're all technically qualified, this is somebody you're going to be discussing your deepest, darkest secrets with. And I mean, and if you don't feel comfortable doing that, it's it's not going to be very effective. And so that's hard. Um, and then the fact that just medications in general, it's just amazing how it just feels like they're treating you like a human experiment where they're like, let's put this one into your brain soup and see what the chemicals do. And by the way, it's going to take 6 weeks before you know what it feels like, and then you're going to have to taper off. If it sucks and it makes you feel awful, you're going to have to taper off for another 6 weeks before you can get rid of that awfulness, and then we can maybe try another one and see if that one is also awful or does nothing. So that's why it takes years and years of being a human guinea pig before they find the right combo for you. Seems like in this day and age, there should be a better way, but there's not. And it's frustrating. And then add health insurance in there. And like, I've been so lucky, but for a lot of people, it is not the case that mental health is covered. And the other thing I want to add is it is such a godsend as somebody living rurally that insurance will cover telehealth now, because getting to those mental health appointments, that it's, like, I feel like they should give you like a big congratulations every time you show up when you have to go to those in-person appointments. But instead, a lot of these places, they have like 24-hour cancellation policies where you get charged for the appointment and insurance won't cover it if you didn't cancel it 24 hours ahead of time. And it's like, what the fuck? We're talking about depressed people here. Getting out of the house is really, really hard. You shouldn't make it extra hard for them. So there's my cussing. I got that out of the way. Uh,
I
yeah.
am with you on that one. The ADHD meds thing about having to refill it every 30 days and having to contact your prescriber. And like, if I had the brain power to do that, I wouldn't be on these meds, you know? And it's to realizing the privilege as white, middle class-ish, college educated native English speakers with good insurance that it's this much of a pain in the ass. What it must be like for everyone else. Because, oh, what a shit show. Okay, well, Arlene has disappeared and not come back. So, Kevin, if people want to get in touch with you, if they want to join the Cheese Club and they live close enough to do so, um, and when does the Cheese Club? When is your shipping season? So I can put it on our calendar, so I don't have to listen to Jim go, I forgot to order again. Because every year.
November through March is when we ship. And we ship regionally to the Midwest. And so I apologize. I know there are people that would love to get our cheese that are in Colorado or the East Coast or the West Coast. And I would just say, I am honored that you want to support us. However, there are some great cheesemakers in your area. Support them.
Or you can just come visit Iowa. we're
You could
friendly.
come visit Iowa. And okay, so we are Lost Lake Farm LLC everywhere. So our website is lostlakefarmllc.com, Lost Lake Farm LLC on Instagram and Facebook, Lost Lake Farm LLC at gmail.com. And if you leave off the LLC, you'll reach a vegetable farm in Michigan. So if you don't see cheese and cows, you're at the wrong Lost Lake Farm.
I'm sure they're lovely people, but they're probably not going to send you cheese.
No, and they know about us, and they're fully annoyed by the emails they get.
Tough noogies. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Kevin. And we'll thank you from Arlene, too. I don't know where she went, but...
Yeah, thanks for taking the time.
Thank you for joining us on Barnyard Language. If you enjoyed the show, please support us on Patreon with a donation.
Big thanks go out to our show editor, Krista Paffrath at the Rural Podcast Network.
Please rate and review the podcast wherever you listen and follow the show so you never miss an episode.
If you want to connect with other farming families, join the private Barnyard Language Facebook group.
We are always in search of future guests for the podcast. If you or someone you know would like to chat with us, get in touch.